Adorable. Here we go. I have Jess on here. I lightly stalked Jess on TikTok. I do not recommend stalking to anyone, but Jess is like the most interesting people I've ever seen. And I really was so amazed by all the content that Jess has created. So we had some back and forth trying to get this, and this is what happens when sick people run podcasts. So welcome,
or
Jess.
sick people go on podcasts.
That's it. I mean, this is really this is like the amalgamation of everything sick is right here. It's sick people talking to sick people, and that means there's a lot of cancellations. So I'm really happy to have you here, and you have so many things you've accomplished. I wanted to first talk to you about your book. It's Being Sick Enough: Thoughts on Invisible Illness, Childhood Trauma, and Living Well When Surviving is Hard. And as I'm going to say adult very lightly, maybe at least age-wise adult. I was a sick kid, and I haven't met a lot of us. So please tell me more about this book that you finished. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. This is an incredibly vulnerable delivery to the world, because there's a lot in there that I've never shared publicly in any way, and have really only shared with a select few people. And so I was ready. I was ready to share these parts of me, because if you know me at all, I'm like, I really value being open. I really value freedom, transparency, honesty, authenticity, all of that. And I wanted to be able to step into that next level of all of that for myself. The book was a long time in the making. I mean, after my first book, Good Sex, came out, I was sitting with my publisher, someone from my publishing house, North Atlantic Books, and I said, I have some other ideas for the next book. And I said, maybe something about chronic illness and trauma, and they're like, yes, that. But this was back in 2018, and so it took me a while, because I was really, really, really sick. I ended up mostly homebound, about I want to say, I should have just been home, but I got out a little bit. And so it's probably about 75% homebound. It was a period where, wheelchairs in the airport kind of thing, or not traveling at all. It was a period where at one point I was traveling internationally to Brazil, and I got taken off the plane by paramedics, because I had had some episode on the plane where I passed out. So it was this period of time I was sick, and I was also going through emotional and mental and spiritual maladies, and I was in an abusive relationship. And so there's just a lot, and there was a bunch of stuff I had to move through before I was ready to write this book, because I needed to get more free and honest within myself in ways that I hadn't been. And one of those was accepting that I was sick, really, really accepting it. Really okay, this is real and has been real for a very long time. And I need to start living as the person I actually am, instead of who I think I should be because of what our patriarchal, capitalist, hustle society says, or because of what I expect of myself based on overachievements as a way to feel good enough, or any of these kinds of things, right? And so it was I needed to accept that no, I'm actually kind of down for the count. And it was through that, and then ultimately leaving that relationship, getting diagnosed with autism, coming out as non-binary, taking a 2-year pause in my relationship with my mother, all of these things brought me to a point where I was I'm ready to do this. And the book is, it's my stories, it's my experience, my lived experience of being chronically ill, having CPTSD, being neurodivergent, and then, sprinkled in there are hopefully things that are going to be helpful as far as things I've done that have worked for me. But mainly the idea of this book is, and why I wanted to write it, partially for me, but also for other people like me. I have been so happy every time I get feedback from someone on the internet or in a review that's I feel seen, I feel understood. This is exactly what it's like, because that was the point. That's why I wrote it. So yeah.
That's one of the most healing things. And if anyone is listening and you hear from there's something that you enjoy, please tell people, because it means so much. I don't know where to go with this right now. So I want to talk to you about what it's like to be a sick kid, especially with an invisible illness. Let's start there, because a lot of time when you say sick kid, people start thinking Macaulay Culkin movies back in the 1990s, and this person has cancer, leukemia. It's there's a doctor who says, this is what's wrong. This is the prognosis. cue the violins, cue the inspiration. And that's not always what it looks like. And it's really hard when you're a kid with tired parents. I am a tired parent. And I also was a sick kid, so I can see both sides now. Not to say that's a full excuse, just saying it's, you don't know, you're not in someone else's body, and children don't have vocabulary yet to really express what's going wrong. And that, from post-traumatic stress and saying what's going on as a child, from medical, from any abuse, from anything, this is a really hard space. So could you talk a little bit about, like, as I was invisible illness, I have Ehlers-Danlos, I've had it my whole life, but we didn't know what it was until I was 36.
Right.
So please tell me what it was like for the invisible illness with peers, with parents, and where that led, because I'm guessing you did a lot of unpacking for this book.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of unpacking over a good chunk of time now. Like, I got sober when I was 27, and that's honestly, and I'm what am I? I'm almost 44. So that's kind of that's when I took away the thing that was allowing me to not drop into the deeper layers. And so I've been on the journey for a while, but even before then, it's like for whatever reason, I've always tried to feel better. Like, I've always been like, I want it to be better, even when I was very, very little. So I was like a really spiritual little kid, and like, really into nature. And like, I was reading self-help books as a teenager, just trying to like figure out, like, how do I feel better? Because this is horrible. As far as illness, so, looking back, so many things make sense. I did have pretty serious pneumonia. I guess we called it double pneumonia. I don't know if that's a technical term or not, and I was quite sick. I think it was 5 or 6. And I think that was my first hospital stay. But before that, there were just all of these moments where, like, I'd be playing with a friend and they'd, grab my arm or something. And then I'd be like, oh God, my arm, I think it's broken. Nobody understood why it hurt so much. Like, it didn't make sense to the adults or to the other kids, because my arm was not broken, right? But the way that my system was processing the pain was very different from how everyone around me was, and, I exhibited very classic fibromyalgia from a very young age, like from the very beginning. There's, of course, fibromyalgia and childhood trauma, they go together quite well. So the pain that I was feeling emotionally was certainly exhibiting physically, and it was changing the way that my brain worked. It was changing the way my nervous system worked. It was changing the way my immune system worked, right? All of these things. So there was a lot of me trying to advocate for my pain, but it not really being taken seriously. And I don't necessarily, like, it's not like I blame anyone. Like, this was the early 80s. I mean, we weren't talking about trauma. We were, we were still beating up our kids. I know that still happens, of course, but it was happening in a more regular way back then, and it was more accepted. And so I don't think it was like a malicious thing that my symptoms were ignored. I just think, my parents had their own invisible illnesses that they didn't accept or know. They had their own CPTSD. They had their own addictions and mental health stuff. So it was just like, there wasn't really necessarily room for mine to be attended to. And so the main thing I remember is just a lot of like feeling alone with it, and feeling like misunderstood, judged, shamed, and also recognizing that if I got sick enough, then I would get the attention I needed. And there's an essay in the book called A Mother's Love, where I talk about being in the hospital with the double pneumonia, and how this like belief formed that, like, if I was gravely ill, because I was quite sick, I would get love and care and consistency and safety and routine and everything that was offered in the hospital. And so it was a confusing thing, because I didn't want to be sick or in pain, but at the same time I was like, well, it'd be better if I was just really sick and in pain, because then I will get what I so desperately need. And there, over the years, there were those periods where, I was hospitalized, I think 15 or 16, with like a really severe kidney infection. And then, there's been a slew of those like extreme cases. But still, even today, it is hard. It is hard for people that don't understand to understand. even the people that love me the most. I went on a trip over the summer. It was my aunt's funeral, and my family is on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. We all took planes and met there in Florida, and in this very tiny little town where, well, this very tiny little town where when I went into an ice cream shop, they wouldn't let me choose my flavor. I could only choose one flavor, and everyone else was allowed to have a choice because of how I look. So I'm just, and it also had Trump Vance flags, like 5 of them.
What's the flavor now? I don't know why my brain's
I,
sticking on that, but
I could only have chocolate. They'd only let me have chocolate.
that's wild.
It was just so odd. But in any case, we get to the airport and, to meet, to then get on a shuttle or rent a car or whatever it was we were doing. Nobody had a mask on. None of my family, not my sister, not my other sister, not my brother-in-law, not my nephew. And I was just like, because this is not uncommon for people to not understand. I didn't like lose it. It's just like, well, this is what happens. Like, this is just what happens. People don't understand. But I said to them, I was like, hey, I can't get sick. Like, when I get sick, I get real sick. And I got like 7 infections in last July, and I'm still not better. So it's like, I can't get, I just can't do it. So it's just, no matter how much someone loves you and understands to some extent, they don't get it. So the times that my family has seen me like unable to walk, like that level of sick, something clicks, but it's almost like they forget. I love them. I love my sisters. They do care. They do check in, all of that. But it's just hard to understand if you don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this applies for your situation, but I always ask the question, do you love me, or do you love me enough to actually like do the things that keep me safe? And I found that those are 2 very different things. It doesn't always mean, like, even the people who say they love me, even wearing a mask might be a step too far for them. And that's sort of how I've decided where I'm safe, because it's not always safe. Do you love me enough to put my wheelchair together? Like, is that going to be like a thing where you're swearing and being all upset and annoyed that you're taking my wheelchair out again and putting it together again? Like, it's one thing to like someone, but are you also willing to keep them comfortable and safe?
It's actually interesting. It made me think of something when you said that. And it's also about like how we love ourselves as well. Because like, when I got those 7 infections last summer, it had to do with going dancing without a mask. And I did that, and I did it because I had found out I had this gene variant, and I started supplementing for it. And I felt better than I'd ever felt in my entire life, literally better than I've ever felt. And I felt so good that I was like, I'm going to go dancing. And, I didn't do that anymore since COVID started. And even before then, I couldn't, because I just didn't have it took too many days to recover. But I was just like, I just want to be out in the world. And I just like, I like myself so much. I want to go dancing. Well, do I love myself enough to recognize that, like, and that was a good moment for me. It's a humbling moment, so many years being sick, but then still needing to learn those things. It's interesting. But, sick kid thing, I want to just come back to it because I kind of like jumped right out of it. And I think there's a level, one of the things that occurs to me when I think about being a sick kid, specifically with the gastrointestinal stuff, is how embarrassing it can be. And there's another essay in the book where I talk a lot about shit. I'm like, it happens. When I was in the booth reading for the audiobook, I was like, oh my God, what did I write? But it's like, I have these like many memories of these horrific experiences involving bowel movements, and just feeling like, especially at certain ages, like, 11, 12,
when everything's humiliating.
It's just, everything.
And for our listeners, if you are like younger than us, please understand there was a time where we didn't tell everyone everything. I would have rather died than had someone read my diary. And now I'm watching everyone around me posting it like as a hashtag sad face. It's like, I'm so amazed and amused. But if you're wondering why we're talking about like how scary this was then, it's because we had this thing called privacy. And if you think you put on a face for social media, I don't know about you, but I was masking my way through life. Like,
My gosh, it's the level of masking, and like, because I'm an actor and because I've always had an interest in performance as well as in spirituality and psychology, the masks were, I mean, the layers are deep. They're real, real deep, because I learned how to kind of like be a person based on all of that. For me, like the overstimulation and everything that comes from that with things like fibromyalgia, but also autism, like I I don't think I was ever not burnt out. I don't think I was ever not running on empty. I don't think I mean, there's a recording of me when I'm, I don't know, 11. I used to like to record myself on a tape recorder also for the younger folks. You know, you push the record, play and record, and then you listen back. You'd be like, that's what I sound like? I sound so weird. But I, I used I used to love recording myself. And there's this one recording, I have to track it down, but it's like, it's talking about, I'm just so tired all the time and my head hurts so much and I have to go get more blood tests and I probably have Lyme and I just I'm just so tired and my whole body hurts. Like, and it's just like that was just normal. And listening to it as an adult, I'm just like, that was just normal. I mean, it's normal now. I know that, but like it just so yeah, I think there was a lot of loneliness. I think there was a lot of loneliness. I didn't have and my parents both had a lot going on, and so their suffering took precedence. It just did.
I wanted to ask you because I know that we're in the beginning of the year. People have their New Year's resolutions of what they want to do this year, and I've heard from a lot of people that they want to write something very personal. They want to write an autobiography or just delve into their experience. And I wanted to ask you about that process because it's difficult when you're writing about real life. I write fiction just specifically so I don't have to attend more therapy. I'm all about the fantasy world. Just get me out of this one. I'm done. But when you're writing about real people who are in your life, how do you decide to do what were some of the processes you made and how did you protect yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's tricky. Another reason, so I wrote Good Sex and then I barely wrote for a good number of years. I wrote an essay here or there if someone was like, you know, offered me money or if I just got really motivated, but I hardly wrote. And there's a reason for it. Reasons. One, I was in denial about my health and I was in the closet. I did not want people to know I was sick. Two, um, I was not ready to talk about my mom. My
Mm.
dad's dead. It's easy to write about my dad. And plus, my dad and I had a not as complicated as a relationship. I knew what I was getting there. It was like, yes, he was an alcoholic with complex PTSD and anorexia, but like he was pretty consistent in the way that he was. That wasn't the case with my mom. And she's living. And so I was scared to tell these stories. I wanted to protect her. I also felt afraid. Just there was some young part of me that felt afraid to like share the secrets or whatever. So I couldn't write those stories. And then I was in this relationship, and literally at one point, this person goes, I never give consent for you to ever write anything about me. I was like, okay. Like everything had to be a secret. You know, with narcissistic abuse, it's just like you get it's subtle. It can be very subtle. In my case, it was all very subtle because you couldn't control me to the point of like you can't be friends with that person or you know give me your bank account, but you could do it with like, why are you sitting in that position? Oh, wait, why did you choose that movie? You should really learn to eat this food. If you were really spiritual enough, you would be able to because you could overcome the feelings you have about that type of like all, just everything. Why are you speaking in this way? Why are you moving in this way? Like all these little things, right? And so when you're told, don't write about me, don't talk about me, you're already so I was already so conditioned to obey. And so I was frozen as far as being able to tell my story. So I needed again to be out of that stuff in order to tell the stories, and then I needed to do, I mean, I've been in therapy forever, but I need to do some specific targeted therapy for the specific types of abuse I had experienced. And then I was in a place where I could write in a way that wasn't just like screw these people, because that's not what I want to write. Like because that's not the story. Like that's just that's venting. That's like the letter you write before you write the real letter. You know what I mean? And so I was scared to be honest, and the first round was not as honest as the second round became. There were things I added the first like round of writing, because I went back into this book and kind of rewrote after finishing it. Then there was like a kind of another round of writing, and I needed to actually get a little bit more clear about what I had experienced, and I felt ready to do that. Originally, I was going to, for the people that it felt necessary to do this with, I was going to send them the manuscript before the book came out. And after talking to therapists and just other support people, it was like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do it, because I'm not in contact with the ex. And so that would mean breaking the no contact, which I didn't want to do. And I think Tracy McMillan, she's a television writer, she's a author, and she was a mentor of mine for a while. And she wrote a memoir that included real people. And I remember her telling me years ago, when I was sort of wrestling with this, she said, these are your stories. They belong to you. You get to tell them. And so that's true. And I think for me, it was just about being honest in the fact that very few people are psychopaths. Very few people are out there intentionally and knowingly harming others. In my opinion, in what I understand with personality disorders, there's a lack of self-awareness. There is a sense of, righteousness, and you can't see outside of yourself. And so most people are not doing what they're doing to try to hurt me. And I wanted that to come across. I didn't want it to be like, all this shit happened to me and poor me. And so that was an important part too. So I would say like a lot of the prep was just like the healing and the deep dives into the specific areas that needed that attention to protect myself. Luckily, my publishers are really great. Like they're already on top of like the bullying that's happening online for me right now, though I don't really need their help. I'm fine, but like they're there to do it. Like they'll jump in, they'll take care of things. They have a company that scrubs the internet of anything of my personal information and things like that. Like they're really great with this, because they do tend to work with authors who are in some cases a bit more controversial than me, certainly. And so I feel very protected in that way. And then, for me to taking care of me has been like, honestly, in the last 3.5 years, it's been a lot of accepting that I've been in this space where I'm not necessarily the best at self-care right now. I'm not necessarily the best at spiritual practice right now. I'm not necessarily the best at getting enough sleep right now. And I'm giving myself grace and permission and kindness around that, and being like, I'm going to keep doing my best, but this is the space that I'm in. And so part of protecting myself is taking care of these parts of self that are just like, I'm tired and I don't want to do everything the right way right now. Just give those parts love.
That's interesting. I get like defiant disorder around doing the right thing sometimes. I mean, I'm almost 50 and I still like brush my teeth every day. Come on, we just did this. We just did this. Meditate. With the world right now, really? You want me to sit quietly with my own thoughts? That sounds like a real dangerous idea. You had said that you needed to dive deeper in your second draft. And I'm curious if it was you who made that choice, your publisher. What about your first draft were you looking at? You're like, I need to come back.
Yeah. When I first started working on this book, what I had pitched and what they had said they wanted me to write was kind of a good sex part 2, except about illness and trauma. So it was going to be a self-help kind of thing. But I'm so grateful I did this. I sent the editor that I was working with some of my creative nonfiction and poems and stuff. And I said, will you just take a look at this? Because in the future, I'd like to do something with this. And she read it and she's like, she took it to the team and they decided they wanted that instead. They're like, we want you to write essays and poems. And I was just like in shock, because that's the dream. Like I don't really have much interest in writing self-help. Like it's not really my passion. Like I'm a creative person who, not that self-help can't be creative, but like I want a lot of freedom and a lot of space and a lot of like, I don't want to have to fit into the structure of like a specific self-help genre. So they championed me to do this other version of the book. And I wrote the whole thing, but there was some sort of some just miscommunications and misunderstandings about certain aspects of the book. And so we kind of paused, reset, and then I went back in with a new editor. And the book didn't change dramatically. It just got better. It got better. And that editor who I worked with really asked me to delve deeper into a couple of different aspects, like wanted me to explore stuff with my father more, wanted me to get more clear on some of the relationship stuff. And so I felt really invited to go in deeper. And I didn't feel pressured. I didn't have to do that, but I wanted to, and the invitation was helpful. And I'm really grateful. Like, the book was supposed to come out. The book originally had a different release date and it got pushed. And I'm really glad, because I think it being able to write all of that and then have like this chunk of time that I wasn't writing, and then to go back in, as painful and intense as that was, it was also really good because I was able to refine and even get more clear about how I wanted to express these things.
So aside from therapy, how did you protect yourself while you're diving back into some serious trauma?
Yeah, so I've been a long-term meditation practitioner, and part of what happened over the years is certain things became really automatic. The recognition that I am not a separate, solid self, that there is a inner connection, that I'm never really alone, that nothing ever really dies, that life is unfolding, reality is unfolding in this really magical way, and that there's really no problem even when there's a lot of problems. There's a kind of unconditional peace and ease and even joy that has become permanent to a certain extent, or to a large extent. And so this is after many years of practice. So it's the kind of fruit of the labor. And I can just trust that and lean into that. And it goes a long way. Also, drugs.
That's where I'm like, oh my God, you're actually going to get me to try meditating. I'll give it a shot then. But tell me about the drugs.
I just want to say, with meditation, there are so many different ways to meditate. I am a meditation teacher, and like, I'm a believer in meditation. It's not a solve all. It has side effects, it's strong medicine, but there are so many different ways to meditate. Anyone can meditate. There's just this idea that there's this one thing that is meditation. It's just not true. So I'm just putting that out there. And if you find the right kind, the right teachers, the right techniques, all of that, it works. It really does. And for me, nothing has been more important than the path of awakening, because the paradigms have shifted in such a way where no matter what's going on, and there's a lot going on, I am okay, like deeply and completely okay. That is worth the hours sitting and meditating, in my opinion. Just putting that out there. The drugs, yeah, I mean, pain meds. I'm on a couple different. I'm on like Wellbutrin.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Year,
I was just trying to be funny about the drugs. We
no,
don't need to go through your list.
No, but I mean, I think it's I think it's actually important, because people sometimes think like, oh, there's this like wellness, spirituality, blah 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 thing.
That's a good point.
And it doesn't go with
you're right.
that.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
It does, right? It absolutely does, which is why I'm really vocal about it, because I see too many people suffering because they think if they just therapy enough, or they meditate enough, or they breath work enough, or they yoga enough. And no, in my case, after having COVID, I got launched into some sort of perimenopause, PMDD, I don't know what thing. And I had to go on a low dose of Prozac, because every month, one day a month, I wanted to die. I wanted to die. And then it would take me days to recover. And then I'd have like one good week a month. And that was after COVID. So like, when I figured out what was going on, and I told my doctor, hey, give me 10 milligrams of Prozac, it really helped, as well as some supplements. But, I'm a big believer in using pharmaceuticals if they work for you. I've been in and out of that. There've been times I've leaned heavy. There've been times I've leaned way back from them. But certainly, while writing this book, I'm really grateful for my pharmaceuticals, because they were a support.
I'm so glad that you said this. And I'm sorry I was being flippant because that's such an important point. And I'm not on those medications, but I am on heavy opioids for my, because I dislocate daily. It hurts. And I had a discussion with my physical therapist, and he was telling me how frustrated he is with this new world order and how people are so scared to take the medicine. And I'm not saying if you get a cavity filled, you should be on oxycodone. I'm saying if you have major surgery, you might need that for a few days to be able to do your physical therapy. Otherwise, you're going to be in too much pain. You're going to get more hurt. And that's what he was telling me. And I think that there's a lot of understanding. There's just a new show that came out on Netflix called Apple Cider Vinegar.
Yeah, I just watched it.
I mainlined that. That was I remember watching all of that, and I remember being because I was working at the time in Silicon Valley, and all of these influencers that were coming through to talk to all of us about how they cured their breast cancer, or they cured this cancer or that cancer through diet. So it's so important that we discuss what medicines we're on, or at least like be honest, because there's so many people who are grifting. And it is deadly. It is so deadly, and it keeps people from getting the proper medicine. I'm not saying if peppermint tea makes you not vomit, please drink the peppermint tea, but also talk to your doctor. Like, both can coexist. Like,
both can exist.
You can take your ginger and you can get surgery. Like, these are not against each other, but there are certain things that do. Especially in this new world, I'm just going to drop down. If you are on birth control and you take St. John's wort for mental stability, your birth control won't work. Just want to throw that out there in this new world. Definitely, if you're taking any wellness, please check interactions, because that can be weird. But I just really want people to be very safe right now.
Absolutely, yeah, you have to look at that stuff. And I'll just say that, like, I'm also on opiates, and there was a time that I was on them daily. Now it's more as needed because I'm also on low dose naltrexone, so that doesn't allow the opiate to work, and I'm on the low dose naltrexone for pain, but I'll go off of it if things are too bad, and then I'll go back on my opiates. One of the really important things is to find doctors that trust you. Like, my doctors trust me. I call them. I say, I need a refill of my Norco. I need a refill of my Soma. I want to try this other drug. And they trust me because they know me. And that is so, so important. And I'll say, like, I've been really grateful to have doctors that have actually literally been like, you are making your pain meds an enemy. Don't make them an enemy. Use them so that you can have a life. So yeah, I'm
so jealous, by the way. I have had doctors, like, while I'm in a wheelchair, force me to do a P-chat test where I dislocated my femur from trying to get out and balance. I have never been treated so bad as in pain clinics and in Walgreens. Like, oh my goodness, I will never go to Walgreens again. That was terrifying. If you have a Costco, by the way, my friends, and you have to do opioids, they are so nice there, at least in my Costco, and I've never had a problem. But it's so frustrating because I'm the most boring person in the world as far as doing wild and crazy things, and to suddenly be thrown into this world where I'm being treated like my word isn't good enough, my history isn't good enough, and my common sense isn't good enough. It's a wild experience to be in. I did want to quickly go back to your book real fast and ask you if there was an essay or a poem where you're like, this is the reason I wrote the book. It's right here is what I want to underline for everyone.
Like, do you want me to, you mean you want to hear a piece of it, or you're just asking?
I would love to if we had more time, but we're only short on time.
Yeah, totally.
Obsessively going over your book, but I just wanted to see if there's something that you're like, this, if I couldn't have written anything else, this is the one I would have written. I didn't mean to give you a Sophie's choice. I'm so sorry.
No. A Mother's Love. That's the name of the essay, A Mother's Love.
That is so complicated from a sick child's perspective. I feel that in my gut. Yeah, we could probably do that one for a therapy visit entirely through. We are running really short in time, which is killing me because I would absolutely kidnap you all day. But I do want to get really quickly over to solitude and disability. And when you're working through trauma, and especially we all went through, we're still going through COVID, and now we have 3 other airborne illnesses that are coming through again. We're also traumatized and exhausted. We're not even blinking. And I feel like we're going to do solitude again. In between trauma and solitude, where do you find your peace? I know you do your meditation, you have your medications, but is this where writing is coming in? Is this where where Zoom calls are coming in. I'm so sorry. I'm being like attacked by my cat off to the side. So if I keep looking to the side, I
Not at
have a
all.
very angry cat who's like, why did you bring a puppy into our lives right now?
Oh, yeah.
That's my little break from solitude and COVID and trauma. I'm so sorry. We can check service
No,
dogs.
no, no.
Solitude
No.
and trauma is too much.
Well, that, I mean, look, I'm going to wake him.
It was a very, very low key way for me to get you to show me your service. Oh my God. Okay, so we do have a YouTube channel. Please go visit it because I need you all to see that Jim Henson is actually God and created this little gremlin who is the cutest thing ever.
I like to just show you how small he actually is. This is Jake. Jake Billy Twist is his full name. He is a little rescue dog. When I got him, he was already doing the things that were necessary to be a psychiatric service dog. But then I just did some additional training and some behavioral training. And so now, yes, now he can sit on my lap in the plane and, all of that. So he is a huge help. Absolutely. He is. Yes, you are. The other thing for me is I love being alone. I didn't used to, but now I really enjoy being by myself. And because of the work I do, I work virtually and I see clients. Like today, when we wrap up today, I'll have like maybe 4 clients today. And so that's different. That's not social, but it's like it's interaction with humans, and it's a rich and rewarding experience to support people in their trauma resolution journey, as well as working with couples and I love working with couples. That's really a enjoyable process. So I have that. So my work doesn't go away because it's virtual. I like to be cozy. I like to organize things. I like to do puzzles as long as I don't hunch over too long and then end up in pain. I love watching.
I have like actually frozen myself over a puzzle where I couldn't sit back up again because my wrist dislocated and I didn't even notice. It was like 6 hours I was doing this freaking puzzle and I realized it once I couldn't breathe anymore.
Hyperfixation, baby.
I have not been diagnosed, but there are plenty who are like eyebrow raised.
But yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of my closest people, the people who I've known the longest or who I feel the safest with, are people that aren't even in the same state as me. And so already like the connection is different than an in-person thing. And then I have I have my bubble people, I have my people who we would like during the fires, I was with my friends who are not far from me because I had no power and the smoke and everything. And so I do try to lean into community, but I am lucky in so much as like I like to be alone. So that works. But I think, look, another thing for me, and please know that it's not I can't say the word. Evangelizing. I'm not evangelizing, and I'm not embracing and supporting of whatever people's experiences, whether it's atheism or Wicca or whatever else, right? For me, my relationship with God and my relationship with Jesus is very, very, very supportive. And I consider myself to be a Christian witch with a Hindu guru. So I'm a weirdo in that way. I mean, I don't think it's weird, but some people do. And so my spiritual connection and my relationship with God and with, people with like Ramana Maharshi, who was like a beautiful spiritual teacher, things like this really support me as well. And I really work to have this conscious contact with that because it takes me out of here I am in my thing to, oh yeah, that's right. Everything's so much bigger. And not only is it so much bigger, but I'm part of it and it's part of me. And that brings a lot of peace and soothing and comfort.
That's really beautiful. I don't know why we're so locked in on our defining a religion when so much of it has the same concept of kindness, compassion, and connectivity. If we look at most of the religions, it is about that we are connected and we need to treat each other with kindness and with Sorry, I'm stumbling on that just because I just got off TikTok and I'm feeling like I just need to scream that like over and over and over again.
No, I know. And I mean, like, I haven't been like, look, I always had a relationship with Jesus ever since I was really little. I was not raised religious. Okay. Not raised religious, but I talk to Jesus as a little kid. I don't know, whatever. But I've had a lot of other spiritual explorations, a lot. I've explored a lot. And it was only a couple of years, I don't know, a few years back that I started going to church and like got baptized and got involved in that way. And it was really a weird identity thing because I was like, because of how horrific Christianity is, and because of what we're seeing with this, white Christian nationalist takeover, like, so I haven't been super loud about it because I've been like, let me just like, I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel safe, but I'm now starting to get louder about it because I'm like, no, there is a different version of this. It does not need to look like what all these people are saying, which is why, even though I know it will turn some people off and offend some people and even trigger some people, I feel like it's important that I speak to my faith and to that love that I connect with, because I want people to know that it doesn't, not because I think people should be Christian, but because I want people to know that it doesn't have to look like that, and that those people are sick individuals.
I keep going back to, I wish them compassion, wisdom, and empathy. That's where I get to with, because you look at the behaviors, and especially with the behaviors towards the vulnerable, and we're in the very marginal, and especially the Venn diagram of vulnerable as far as the different things that they're looking at harming. And you look at people who want to step on people, and that's someone who is very hurt and scared. And I just keep hoping for them to develop the sense of wisdom and compassion and empathy. And that's what I just keep repeating over and over in my head, to try to make some, because I'm a pacifist. I try real hard. There are people who make it a lot harder, but I do try. Veered so far off of our topics.
No, I think it's all part of it. And I'll just say that, like, that's
mental health. We are right in the middle of a space right now where we're looking at them removing Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the amount of things that they're looking at taking away and removing people's actual identity, and the removing autonomy of being like, not even trusting us to know our own idea of what our genders are, and to not even like trust us to go, hey, this is how I am, and I will never meet you, person, but you are trying to affect my life won't affect yours, but you're trying to change mine. And that's a really frustrating thing, I think, for everyone. I hope it's frustrating for everyone, because we are adults, we deserve, and even children deserve autonomy and their ability to, and we're back to your original place of like, children deserve to be able to tell you they know themselves, they know their bodies, they know their mind, they're smart creatures, like kids are amazing.
Absolutely. Like I am, if I had the language for non-binary when I was a kid, I would have used it, and it's like, I think I love what you're saying about how you try to approach this with that empathy and that compassion. And that's exactly what I do. So online,
I fail at this, by the way, all the time. I need to be really transparent with everyone who's listening. Oh my gosh, I get a lot of like, how do you do all this? You're amazing. No, I fail at this all the time. It's a practice.
It's a practice, exactly. Yeah. But like, that's my thing. Like, if you go on any of my TikTok videos where I'm being like piled on with like a lot of hate,
you're impressive on how you handle all that, by the way. I'm always watching that going, my goodness.
It's worth it, because if out of 300 people, 3 or 4 of them want to have a real dialogue, this happens, and they say, I don't agree, but I can see what you're saying, and I respect you, and you've gained a follower. Some of them have actually become people that I'm like messaging with, and we're dialoguing about things, and that's how the world changes, in those like little interactions. And so that's what I do. I don't argue online. That's the thing. And by not arguing, there's not anything that can happen there. I greet it with kindness. I might greet it with kindness a second time, but after that, I let it go. And some of them, some of them, it's like, I'm not going to respond to every clown emoji. It's like, why? Like,
exactly.
But
I know that RuPaul is a little touchy of a subject, but RuPaul said one thing that I really loved, which is, I'm going to paraphrase because God knows I can barely tell you what my name is right now. I just got a puppy 2 days ago and I haven't slept, but it was something along the lines of, some things aren't for you. And if you aren't like jiving with what I'm saying, this might just not be for you. If you're giving me a lot of hate, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to this other person. And then my only way of staying sane online is I said what I said. I'll go back if someone is like piling on me or like getting a whole bunch of like growl stuff. I'll go back and look and just make sure that there wasn't any way that I could have been misinterpreted or I didn't. It's context that we're missing in social media. And if I look and I feel like I said what I said, that's just it. I said what I said. I'm done. I'm not going to clarify or go back. It's exhausting. And I have kids and animals and an illness, and I would rather read a book, to be honest, than deal with all of that. So we are definitely closing on an hour. I just really wanted to quickly ask you if you have any must-haves for travel. You talked about using a wheelchair, and oh my gosh, I would talk to you for the next hour about ambulatory wheelchair users. You're coming back on, right? Promise me you're going to come back.
I would love to, please.
Yeah. I'll really quickly just close this episode out, and you will be back to talk. We have so much more to go through between service dogs and your other book discussing being present during sex. From emotional trauma to physical trauma, we have so much to talk about. So you will come back. But to close this episode out, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what you have to travel, because I know people are definitely looking to travel for all sorts of reasons for very long flights right now. What's your must-haves aside from like passports and?
Yeah, make sure you get that passport.
Please, everyone, if you're even 6 months out for your passport renew now. Yesterday now. Okay.
And you can do it online. And they said 6 to 8 weeks. I got it in 2.
Yeah, I did too.
And,
yeah.
And I'm grateful that at the 11th hour, I chose not to start putting putting an X on my IDs, because I would be screwed right now. So I don't feel good about it. I wish there was an X on my IDs, but
please, everyone, be safe. Like, I know we all need to be open and honest about ourselves, but please be safe first. Yeah. You can't do a lot if you're not safe.
Exactly. When it comes to that stuff. So so for me, one of my travel must-haves is I'm a real fan of richer, poorer sweatsuits. I'm actually wearing the pants right now. Richer, poorer, I really like. I also like Girlfriend Collective. And I just ordered some Comfort. It's not spelled comfort, it's like shortened, but they are slightly weighted. It's almost like a little bit of a weighted blanket. And they have a bunch of different options, including a travel version that has little pockets and stuff. I got an oversized version. So I can't speak to it yet, but from all the reviews and everyone I've spoken to, it's like really great for those of us with chronic pain and chronic illness, this particular brand. So soft, cozy, comfy, but for me, I like it when it's matching, because I just feel good. You know, the other thing is a travel must have for me is a protest t-shirt or hat, something that I can, like my trans rights are human rights t-shirt, or my watermelon support of Palestine baseball cap. Like, I wear that stuff because I want to be a visible protest out in the world. The other thing for me is like, to always have, obviously to travel with my own food, but to keep it simple. And because when I try to put too much together, it gets overwhelming. So to keep it simple, but also to, when you go through security, to let them know, hey, I have food for medical condition. Let them know before it runs through the thing so that they don't bug you about it. The other thing is TSA pre-check, global entry. It is worth it. Yes, you have to go into an appointment, but do it, because it makes your life so much easier. And then compression socks, and
yes, those
right, they're really important. And then the shoes I like to travel in. I often end up wearing my boots because I don't want to pack my boots, and I'm a Doc Marten, like I just need them. But my favorite travel shoes that are just really comfortable are what are they called? They're not Freebird. They're I'm blanking on what they're called. Something bird. I don't know.
Allbird?
Allbird, yes, Allbird. The Allbird.
That's how Silicon Valley I am.
Yes. Allbird wool loungers.
Those are good.
They super comfortable, super great for travel. And then loop earplugs.
Those are nice. Yeah. My favorite are these AirPods.
With the noise cancellation.
I don't know how I survived without noise cancellation. That's almost like medical necessity for me at this point. I even bought them for my teenager because my teenager has anxiety, and I was like, I just want you to try these and just see. And the difference was huge.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I
That's
think
some
those are
good
those are my
advice.
main
And
things.
for the podcast, not for me. If you can send me a link to that weighted thing with pockets, I would.
Yes,
We'll put that onto
absolutely.
there too, but that's for me.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you for being here, Jess, and you will definitely be coming back. So
I would love that.
We will have a link to your book right at the top. So if you go to invisiblenotbroken.com, right at the top, there'll be a direct link to buy the book and to all of Jess's socials. So if you want to help Jess out and just keep the pile-ons from happening, stand up,
please.
be nice, be kind. Thanks, everyone. My goodness.
And jessicagraham.com, it's being built, but there are links to like apply for an intro session with me, as well as links to other stuff, my film stuff and things like that. So you can find out more about me there too.
And we'll have that too. We'll have all of your links just right up at the top.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Be
Thank
kind,
you.
be gentle, and in whatever way it looks like to you, be fierce.